streaming.
Super slow this morning.
And we're recording.
Welcome, everyone. We are convened Iron County Commission meeting of the 28th day of May 2019. Beautiful rainy day, if you like rain. First of all, we Adrian, would you lead us in the pledge? Absolutely. And Mike, would you offer a prayer today for us?
Sure.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our Father in heaven, as we come before thee today, as citizens of Iron County, we're truly grateful for the opportunity that we have to serve. We're very grateful for the opportunity to live in a free country. In this Memorial Day season, we pray for our military and our troops, that they will be kept safe from harm as they defend our freedom. We pray for those who have lost their lives and their families, that they will be comforted and know that that sacrifice is for a just cause. Father, we ask thy Spirit to be with us today as we go about the business of our constituents, that we may be able to make decisions that will benefit and better the whole of Iron County. Father, we're grateful for this wonderful world we live in and the moisture that we have received this year. We pray for these things today in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you both very much. Okay, we have minutes from the meetings of April 8th, 2019 and April 22nd, 2019. That I would entertain a motion on.
Make a motion to approve those minutes as mentioned.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the Iron County Commission meeting of April 8th and April 22nd, 2019. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. So these. Thanks, Jared. Okay, this time we have department reports. John, you're first.
Okay.
You good? No, you're good. You're eager. Or you're worried about.
Eager or worried? You want one, but Okay, so as you can see, the budget is doing fairly well. Because I signed for different areas, I was grateful Dan actually added to my budget sheets. I have clerk, non-departmental elections. I actually help with a little bit of the building stuff. I've just given you the first couple of pages there. The clerk budget is fine. Non-departmental, we did have some expenditures. That doesn't all associate with me necessarily, but I believe they had to do with the building as well. That's why that percentage is at 75. And elections is low, but we haven't started to spend money yet. So, but I do want to point out, we ran out of marriage license books earlier this year, and so I ordered a bunch more. And anyway, they were a little more expensive than we anticipated, so we had to kind of spread that over a couple of those funds. We may be tight on like other current expense. and office supplies and small equipment in the clerk budget. But I do have some flexibility on that, and I don't anticipate any problems on being able to operate, but we'll keep those within budget. We had to kind of spread those marriage license books over a couple of different budgets. So, but we should be good for another, hopefully, decade or so. We bought quite a few. We got municipal elections coming up this year. The filing period is going to be pretty soon. The primary will be in August, and of course the general will be in November. We don't anticipate any problems with that. We had a program called Vista Local that the state ran and developed. There was a gentleman named Ray Palmer at the state who has since retired, but he developed Vista and Vista Local, and Vista is an acronym. It's like voter information, something. But it was a brilliant program for its day, and it was developed about the time we got those Dominion machines, and it has since lived its life cycle. So the state is in the process of revamping, actually rewriting Vista. They're going to keep Vista in-house, but this Vista Local, what it was intended to do was to talk real time between the polling places and the state database, so that an individual wouldn't be able to try and get away with voting in two different places or with two different methods. And using that live link, we were able to safeguard that. The state has since gone through a purchasing process, and we're going to use a company statewide called No Inc. It's kind of a double entendre, KNOWINK. No Inc. The idea being that it's mainly paperless in the way that it tracks the voters. And this primary election will be our first deployment of it. And so we're looking forward to that. I've been to several of their presentations. It seems pretty intuitive. I'm not too worried about it. Earlier this year, Cindy retired, and we do fill her. We do miss her and fill her absence, although it was fortunate because we were able to add Mara Lee to our ranks, and she came via Sevier County, and we've really enjoyed her. She and Commissioner Cousins are both from Moab. Is there a term for Moabites?
We are the Red Devils over there.
There you go, the Red Devils from Moab, but
Is that politically correct?
No, it's
Forge
not.
Devil?
No, it's not. That's the next thing.
I'm gonna refrain from comment.
Sure.
And then finally, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but well, actually, I do want to cover one little topic, and that is the back of your paper has sewer expense, and it's actually we generally trend over on that, but that's just because of growth. So as homes are built in the unincorporated areas, whatever we budgeted for sewer expense continues to grow. Dan has done a great job at trying to project that, so it's really not too far off at 39%, and that's the expense side. The revenue side is also, I didn't print that off for you, but the revenue side is comparably a little bit high as well. And then finally, we are looking forward, Lester and Nate are planning on building some shelves in our vault. We're going to get those up, and we're excited to maybe get all the way moved in. So anyway, that's what I have for you. Do you have any questions for me?
Why didn't we build those as part of the bid? Just didn't happen?
We didn't realize, well, yes, but also we didn't realize exactly what we wanted. We kind of got them in there, and we didn't realize the number of filing cabinets we would want, and it was one of those deals where we weren't sure right out of the gate. So, but yeah, they've consented to do that for us, and we're looking forward to having those. We've kind of got stuff spread between archive and our election room, and then the big room downstairs, and we'll be glad to kind of get things, a place for everything, and everything in its place is the goal. So.
Very good. All right, any questions for John?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
HR, Adrian, good morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Have the HR report and the Public Defender report to follow. But as for Human Resources, budget-wise, the department's within the established budget for 2009, with the exception of an unexpected vehicle operations expense that's been previously discussed and approved before we moved forward, but it was a major repair that was needed on the car that's used by the HR department. But otherwise, in terms of all the rest of the budget, everything's in line and well within established guidelines. So, and on that repair, I've got everything sent to Dan and got him up to speed with that expense. As for hiring and recruiting efforts by the department, just a quick update in terms of what we've done since the last quarter, or since the last report. We've posted, interviewed, and hired for the following positions. There was a part-time bailiff for the Sheriff Patrol Department, a full-time videographer, graphic designer for tourism, full-time deputy clerk for the clerk's office, full-time building inspector, zoning officer for building and zoning, full-time landfill technician for landfill, and a full-time secretary one for sheriff, for the Sheriff Corrections Department. Currently, we're in the process of finalizing, actually have some interviews scheduled for this week, and finalizing the hiring for the following, another full-time medical technician for the Sheriff's Office, which is a backfill, a seasonal outdoor maintenance technician that just works for the summer with tourism and weeds, and a full-time maintenance worker for the road, which is another backfill position that we're working on. And then we're also advertising right now and actively recruiting for another full-time patrol deputy roster. We're just in the process of getting that up to speed. So, as for some points of interest, I kind of just like to monitor and keep track of turnover. It kind of gives us some good indications in terms of where we are with employee-related, morale, performance, things like that. Turnover for the first quarter of 2019 was 1.75%, which going back to 2011, which I have records for, that's actually the lowest first quarter going back to that time. So it kind of gives us a good idea in terms of the health of the employee-related health of the county.
That's pretty amazing. Excuse me for interrupting. That's pretty amazing, though, in this economic climate where there's lots of jobs. So.
Yeah, I think so. Like I say, I think it does speak to some, things that, that are going on. And sometimes you just hear a lot. Sometimes you hear some of the negative, but I think there's a lot of positive. And I try to reinforce that with every meeting I get with department heads and employees that, where we discuss employment related concerns, is just that the county is, it's a good place to work. There's a lot of positives. There's, a lot of benefits that go along with that. And it's not always just the negative that you hear. Sometimes that's the loudest, but really overall, very healthy, I think, in terms of employment and where we're sitting. So, as for workers' compensation and unemployment claims, we're trending very well in those areas as well, very low. As an additional workers' compensation note, WCF, which is our work comp insurer, they just sent us a dividend check, which was amounted to about 8% of our 2018 premiums. They're a very healthy running organization, running very well. That was just a little under $10,000, which was reimbursed back to us in the form of that dividend check, and that'll be forwarded to the auditor's office this week for processing.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's nice to get a little money back. We send them a lot more, but it's nice to get a little back, right?
Nice that they are fair that way if we don't use it.
Right. normally we get a chance to review and compare some medical trends and usage by quarter with our medical insurance, since it's such a large expense. But with us changing carriers this year from Select Health to PEHP, we just don't have the data. So I kind of like to watch those trends too, just to see, to try to project out again, just because it is such a big expense for us in the county. But I actually don't have anything. We haven't had a chance to meet yet this year, and they're telling me that we need a good 6 months of good data before it really will give us any kind of indicator. So maybe I'll have a little more insight. Not maybe. I really should have some more insight where that's concerned at the next report. But we're trying to work on getting a meeting scheduled where I get with our Gallagher reps and PEHP, provide some insight, and then where we just kind of go in and analyze a lot of that data, and it really gives us a good indicator in terms of where we're going, if we're trending okay or if we're to expect increases. All hope is that we should be flat or maybe even a little better than what we originally estimated when we renewed. So we're also currently working with our PEHP and Gallagher reps to schedule dates for biometric health screenings for the employers. With our new plan, there's some financial incentive for us to do that by employee. If I remember correctly, I think it's built into our plan. If they do that, there's an incentive where the employee can get like $50 back. So we're trying to, and they'll help us with, those screenings, just because of the benefit that provides us to know where our cholesterol's at, where our BMI, things like that. That is basically a health, a wellness checkup. So they'll provide that as a free service. And we've actually had, I know that the workforce, they've inquired about it. So I know there's some some interest out there. So we're working on getting that scheduled. Right now, we anticipate that it'll probably be about the middle of July, but I'll send out some more information, or Betsy will probably send it out just to keep everybody updated. There'll probably be a few different locations here within, certain county locations where employees can go on a break or, or work it out with their supervisor where they can kind of get off to get that done and reap the benefits of those screenings. So really that's about it in terms of the HR report, unless you have questions or other topics that you want me to touch on.
No, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks very much.
The public defender report, everything is running smoothly. There'll be really we're still in the middle of the grant process that I know some of you have kind of kept track of, and it's been kind of a slow process, but well, maybe not slow, but it's working its way through the steps. But it just kind of, I think there's more steps to it than we originally anticipated, at least in terms of me. But we're making some progress. The grant committee will be making determinations and kind of finalizing grants sometime this coming week, and it'll be effective starting July 1 of this year. I think it would probably be my suggestion that if there's time, it might be helpful for us to schedule a meeting to kind of go into further detail regarding that process, just to make sure everybody's on the same page before it's finalized. Because there are some, as has been mentioned before, there is some financial commitment that the county's, that the county needs to be willing to take on. I'd feel much better about the whole process if we just make sure everybody's on the same page in terms of where we're at and kind of where this leads us. And there's a lot of benefits associated with it, don't get me wrong, but just to make sure that it's what you anticipate and kind of what you expect, and so that you can make an informed decision before we get locked into something that's long term.
So who all would be in that meeting.
Well, that was actually a question I was going to pose to you. Is there's with Lori and I know we worked with Commissioner Cousins quite a bit, but where technically I'm over the public department or public defender, I report to the commission chair. Wasn't sure if maybe both of you need to be there, or if maybe it's like a commission thing. I was actually going to inquire about that in terms of the best way to go, or because I know you're Commissioner Cousins, you're over the Justice Court in general, correct? So maybe something to discuss.
Well, I'd be happy to have the liaison take care of that, then he can report to us.
Okay, perfect.
If you're good with that.
And give me
And I know Lori's probably kept you up to speed thus far, but I just wanted to make sure that it was something that we at least touched on in today's report.
Well, while you're talking about that, Adrian, I want to bring something up. This roster that the state's come up with for our indigent appeals, I'm not happy with that. I mean, I don't think. I just think we have good attorneys in Iron County that can represent us, and I'd almost say if they don't want to let us use our own attorneys, or they don't want to approve attorneys in Iron County, they can pay for themselves. I don't know what's going on, but St. George, Washington County has had hardly anybody. I think they had one appointed, and we've had none, and I don't think it's right. And I think we need to stir it up. I think we need to. And I've tried writing letters. I've tried doing other things. I haven't gotten very far, but we have very capable attorneys that have done a good job for us. And the states, we've been paying like $1,500 for a guilty plea, or for a 1-day deal, and we're looking at paying $7,000 or $10,000 now because we don't have anybody approved. We have to bring them from Salt Lake. Dan?
Are on that roster statewide?
I don't know, but they're all from northern Utah, most of them, and I don't think it's fair. I just don't. I don't know what you other two think, but I think we need to start saying, look, if you guys don't let us have our own people do our work down here, you pay for it. And they do provide grant money for that, but it to the taxpayer, it raises the cost tremendously, and I don't think it's necessary.
And that was part of my concern. Again, just wanting to make sure that everything's communicated in a way that everybody has all the information. Just because I have some of the same concerns, just because I just don't understand the increase in the cost, even though they're willing to, help cover that in the form of the. It's such a big expense in terms of. But I'll be the first to admit I'm actually very new to this whole process, and just Lori's much more educated, much more experienced, and she tries to keep me up to speed and everything as much as she can. But we have 3 appeals right now that have gone, north, basically to Utah County, that normally we had handled here until this roster issue.
But we have 3 right now.
And that's the highest thus far.
So we're looking at, instead of spending $4,500, probably spending $24,000.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's ridiculous. It really is.
And
And I wrote a letter to Thomas Justice Lee, and he responded, but we still haven't seen any.
Is this like a mandate, or is it?
No, they just say, well, they have a committee. They have a committee that selects the appellate roster, which they call, and we just have not been able. We've had 2 attorneys locally, one that has, both have done work for us, and both have applied twice now, and both have been, and they won't give them a reason why they aren't approved either. They won't tell them.
Yeah, I was going to
Just
mention
no.
that too.
We're
That's
just using
part of the frustration is if
And
I was going to mention that too. As part of the frustration is that there's the denial that takes place, but there's not really the information in terms of, you can try to read between the lines, but in terms of, you can guess, but nobody really knows why we can't get a local.
You two have any ideas, or anybody here?
I've got a little bit of input. So I sit on the state Indigent Defense Fund board, and there's actually 2 of those, kind of. I don't know how to explain the other board. The board that I sit on oversees funds for capital cases, basically. It's the other board that oversees what we're talking about as far as the roster goes. There was some discussion about that in our last meeting, and basically what we got, what we were told was just live with it. I don't agree with that, but I think there's some. I've actually, I'll reach out to some other members on our board who are, and our board's made up of prosecutors, commissioners, defense attorneys from all over the state.
Do they choose the roster?
No,
They
no, our board doesn't. It's the other board, and I don't know exactly. I know that they're made up of
Some on the
judges.
Supreme Court. Some of them are on
Yeah, I know there's representative from the Supreme Court, attorneys, other judges. So I think that's probably where some of that backlash is from. I think the majority of that other board are made up of judges, and they know better than everybody.
Right.
Well, we
And
never
so-
had this for years, though.
No, but I can. I'm going to reach out through the people that I work with and see if we can get an in or a meeting or something there.
I will drive to Salt Lake and meet with whoever I need
Sure.
to. And I've wanted to do that. I just don't know where to go.
Right.
Well, my question is, can we vote with our feet, or are we mandated on this?
Well,
Or is it
I think it's amended.
mandated?
It's pretty much mandated because it's it's a constitutional right to have representation.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And
not
and,
just
and we
providing that.
and we have to provide that. So
and I personally think it's the old when you go to shopping at Walmart and you see a low price, a middle price, and a high price, you assume that the high price is the better when it's not necessarily, right? I don't know if that's the mindset because they look at the prices we've been paying down here and they think, oh, they can't do a good job for that price. I just don't know, and we've had stellar service from those that have been doing our work down here, and so I don't know.
That's why I ask if we can vote with our feet and just go with the people we've been using, but apparently we can't.
Oh, you can't. No, they
Yeah.
mandate it.
What drives me nuts is we're on the hook for paying this, yet, and we know there's been abuses in the past with, you can stretch these things out, and if you want to, if you have a scrupulous attorney or something, you can stretch these things
Yeah.
out. We're on the hook to pay whatever, at least where we can hire our own attorney in the past, we've been able to say, we don't like the work you're doing for us, we're gonna put it out to bid, and we're gonna get another attorney. We feel like they're kind of milking the system or something. In this case, we're paying a high-powered, expensive law firm out of Salt Lake, or, lawyer up there to do it, and we have no say in the process.
Yeah.
What if
The
we
only
refuse
difference
to-
is the only difference is it's just a high-powered law firm that charges more per hour, or they have a minimum.
Yep.
And we've had people here that have done just as well as Commissioner Cousins says, and charge us much less, and they don't have the travel expense, and on and on.
What if we just refuse to pay anybody that's not from our county?
Well, I'd be interested in playing hardball and see what happens.
I'm to that
'cause
point.
It's just it's ridiculous, and I don't know. Was there a change, or were they just happy? I mean, has our guy been on a roster? I mean, because for years and
No.
years
There wasn't a roster.
we just
Never
were
been on a
able to do
roster.
get who we wanted, and okay.
And it is somehow tied. It's been mentioned in terms of constitutional rights. It's that there's like this background. There's an explanation and some legal basis for it. The missing piece here is they've insinuated. They've kind of alluded to the fact that it's a quality representation issue, but without really being willing to show us in terms of where the quality may be lacking, instead of just the cost issue that's been right. I mean, and I think maybe if there was some more information that they were willing to share in terms of how they made that determination, in terms of whether there was representation that wasn't being provided up to a certain standard, but that's what we just don't have that information. It's just and so then that leaves us to assume, and we all know where that gets us sometimes.
Well, they're basically mandating their directive, what they want us to do, and they're giving us the responsibility to do it, but not the authority to take care of ourselves.
Right.
And those two things
Yeah.
go together, and so
And the service that we're getting is been very good, but it in terms of where the appeal, in terms of who's providing those the appeals services now, but it's not to say that we weren't getting good service before. I mean, so it's just, but it's at a much higher expense. And then with the caveat that, well, they're going to help cover those expenses, but no, to what Dan mentioned. I mean, we pay those initially, apply for reimbursement, and then the grant only covers a certain period of time.
that goes away. So it's like the federal
then
government. You take the
and
free
then-
money, but then it goes
exactly.
away later.
And that's where I just get a little uncomfortable. I want to make sure that we get you all of the information and that we go in a direction that you want. And maybe we're going down the right road, but I just don't want to get to a point where you feel like you made decisions that was lacking off of information.
What do you mean it goes away later?
Well, I think they initially cover those costs, but I think down the road they don't.
Yeah.
Isn't that your understanding?
To my understanding,
They give us some grant money to help offset the cost increase, but I
they
think
don't
eventually
guarantee a
that goes away.
perpetual renewal. So it could be 3 years down the road. We've got certain increases built in, and then that grant money can be pulled back, or maybe it's not renewed, or it's not in the state budget. I mean, there's just they're not going to give us any guarantees.
Was this dictated by the legislature?
That's
It was, wasn't
my
it?
understanding.
Actually, the court. It's a court rule
So it's a court rule, not a.
saying that no attorney cannot represent an indigent client in the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court unless they are approved. So I think it was the court rule.
So what's your recommendation playing hardball?
Well, I don't think you're gonna be successful just refusing to pay somebody. And the other problem is you're not gonna be able to get somebody to just take the case and see what happens, because the court isn't gonna let them actually appear and represent that individual. I think you just gotta get the rule changed.
Well, I talked to Senator Vickers about it, and he's going to look into it, but I don't know where
I
we
don't know
go.
why they can't approve somebody from down here. I mean, we don't have inferior attorneys.
No.
The one we've been using, has been extremely good. And I mean,
The tough issue is if it's a court ruling, it's not necessarily subject to the legislature. I mean, I guess the legislature can come back and the legislature can come back and make some sort of a law. Then the court interprets that law and does what they want to do. That's their job. So, we need to work on it. And I'm through my contacts with my board. Let's get on it. If we can get some specific numbers, especially the cost of these latest appeals that we're dealing with, so we can show them a comparison. And we can get right on it.
We have a good estimate in terms of enough information, and it's going to be, we estimate it'll probably be about 18,000 more, just in terms of these three appeals. Every one is about 6,000 more than what we would normally.
Well, you're only halfway through the year.
Yeah, I'm just saying for these, it's for each one, we can estimate that it'll run us about 6,000 more per appeal.
And I was told 7 to 10, so that's actually cheaper than what they've told us. But.
So, and like I say, that's estimate. In terms of what we, the numbers that we put together, but it's, we'll track it. That's one thing. We'll make sure that you get that information, those dollar amounts, as we get further into it. But right now, it's the direction that we have to go, just to, but. If nothing else, I think maybe it's justified. Maybe there's good answers out there, but I think there's more information that needs to be shared with us that probably.
I don't
Only
think so. I think it's political. I think that those guys up there want to use their attorneys from northern Utah and give them the work. I think it's that simple.
That may be the case, or maybe maybe they'll be able to provide us a better explanation on it. But that's where.
And in some of the discussions I've had, I think that's absolutely right. I think it's an arrogance. I think it's the usual northern Utah versus southern Utah, and I think there's a basis of arrogance in it that we can do better than you and we know better than you. And I really felt that in some of the conversations that I've been involved in. It's frustrating.
there is one in Washington County.
There was one that was approved.
Can we use the one from Washington County, or would it be the same amount of money? Or
I don't know.
Anybody know?
I think it's more. I think it's the same amount. I think
Same.
it's When you're the only game in town, you can name your prize.
I do.
Their government the governor makes those appointments.
Right.
There should be a list. You could reach out to them.
Yes, and I'll get that.
Oh, I can work on that.
In fact, it's probably on a website. I'm sure it's on Utah.gov's website.
We definitely need to keep pushing the issue. See if we can get a resolution.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yes. In terms of contracts, maybe just a quick update there. As a reminder, all contracts are current. The district court will renew January 1. Juvenile justice will renew July 1. And 3 months prior to each, we'll be contacting current contract holders to determine their intent to continue. In all cases, there will most likely be increases. But that's another thing that I would like to discuss. There, in terms of attorney hours, we are seeing, in terms of the data we collect, we're seeing an uptick in hours, caseload, things of that. So when I say there will be an increase, I think it's because there will be work to justify that. But, just to kind of keep that in mind, maybe so we can try to plan for it or maybe strategize. So,
Do you have any percentage on the trend on how much it's gone up in the last 12 months?
This is another, through this grant process, it's actually contracts are a part of that, and they've got some recommendations for us. But it's another area that, that bears further discussion because there are substantial increases, but a lot of them are just in terms of what they do is they compare us in terms of the meetings I've had or the meetings I've sat in. They're comparing us to other third-class counties. They're comparing us, statewide, and this is where Iron County, in terms of everything that I have a chance to participate in, whether it's from the HR viewpoint, insurance, we're just very. I think we're good at holding down costs as a county in terms of what I see countywide. That speaks to department heads that are conscious of costs. I think we're just conservative in nature. I think it speaks well to the way that the county's ran and overseen. I think this is just another area where they look at some of the costs that we've been able to hold down over time and not be unfair. I think it's still, I think it's very reasonable to say that we're fair, but we just are not as quick to overpay, like some, so I just don't think it's fair to compare us and to look at others and say, well, you're paying less. We need to get these contracts up without further discussion and justification. Like I say, and maybe it's justified, but I just think, again, I just don't think we do it blindly just because everybody else is doing it.
So, Adrian, I just wanted to clarify. Did you anticipate an increase in caseload and contract, or is it mainly that increase in the contract price? What
I was referring to there is just in terms of the tracking that we do already for 2019. If we compare to prior 2018, 2017, we can see a slight uptick in both caseload and hours.
And then,
Are we talking hours or caseload? Hours are self-tracked and caseload.
In terms of the numbers I get, I'm seeing just a little increase in both. So yeah, Commissioner Cousins, if we can maybe reach out. Lori's out of town today. I need to check her schedule, but maybe if there's a time this week or next that we can get together and just make sure that. And I'm pretty sure she's probably kept you as updated as she's really good about providing updates and providing information. But if we can all just maybe have a short meeting, make sure that we're on the same page and get some direction.
Is this what you're talking? We need to get together. Did you have a set meeting already with this other?
No. I'm just saying. I think she and I would feel much better about the whole process if we just have a chance to report to you and get a gauge on it.
I'll drive to Salt Lake and meet with each board member if I need to. I mean,
okay.
We need to get a handle on this.
That's probably. I have some information. I didn't get a chance to email it. I apologize. I wanted to get some of these numbers to you beforehand. I'll make sure I get them emailed to you and John, just for records. But unless there's other questions, I won't take any more of your time.
Okay, thanks so much. Appreciate that report. Morning, George. Welcome.
Morning, Commissioners.
You controlling this weather?
Actually, Commissioner Cousins and I talked about that. He felt that we were going to go from winter right into summer. I feel more that we're going to go from winter to about a week of fall, and we're going to go right back into winter again. So,
Oh, bad prediction, bad prediction.
Is your hay growing, Alma?
No,
It's not.
I don't even have to mow my lawn. My lawn's not
we're
even-
going to have enough water that you're going to have 3 or 4 cuttings if we can ever
Yeah, we'll have plenty to
get to
water
that
it. Yeah.
point.
But
Get
it's
some
not growing.
sunshine, huh?
It's cool weather.
It's not. It's the hay's just kind of sitting there.
Well,
So,
and Bryan has got the best snow, July snow of any state in the union. So, yep, we're good. So, to my budget, we're pretty good. I'm within limits on most items. There's a couple of things. Line 252, which is my vehicle maintenance, had some major expense on the Tahoe. It's getting older, so so I'm getting down on that. I'm going to try to limit to oil changes. So, and I'm taking care of it and treating it nicely, so it'll last for a while. Fuel, even though fuel costs, continue to always creep up, we're well within limits. Probably the biggest item on there, and I spoke to Dan this morning. Last year, we in communication alert systems in line 281, we had $21,000. And after looking at some of the expenses that were used for that, I took $3,000 out and brought it down to $18,000 because I felt like we weren't probably going to replicate some of that. But then Everbridge, which is our primary expense in there, because of increase in population and in normal operating costs, they went up $1,650 on me. So we're going to need a budget adjustment on that item. Now, the municipalities, all the major municipalities, pay their portion of Everbridge to us. Yeah. Everybody's current for 18. We haven't started collecting 19 yet, but I'll go back and I'll have Dan check my numbers because I'm not an auditor, and we'll raise those accordingly so that the municipalities are paying that increase as well.
while you're there, is Paraguna still not paying?
No, as far as I know, Stephanie told me that she had received money from Paraguna, but I'll recheck that.
Okay, awesome. Because for years they just wouldn't pay. So maybe with the new leadership they've started to pay. So I'm glad to hear that.
Okay, and any municipalities that don't pay, I'll be sure and let you know. But we're up to date on 18, and so it's just 19 that we're looking at.
The Cedar Highlands pay into that?
No, not yet. And I've got a meeting. Chief Phillips and I are going to go up. I've repeatedly tried to reach out to their mayor and have had no replies to emails or phone calls. And I really need to see what I'm a little nervous about their emergency plans as to what they're going to do if they have to evacuate their town. And so Chief Phillips and I are going to make a day and go up there and sit down with their mayor, and I'm going to.
They have their council meetings in the library. In fact, I was leaving a water meeting last week when the mayor was walking in. He said we hold our council meetings here, so you could even maybe get on their agenda. And go.
Okay, great. Okay.
Your city library?
Mm-hmm.
You moved it out of Mayor's Garage, huh?
Oh,
Well, they used to have it? Really?
I know they don't have. Well,
I don't know if that's where they always hold it, but he just said we're having our council meeting, so I just don't.
Maybe it's too cold to hold it in the garage anymore.
Better to have it in a public place.
So that's it on Everbridge. The office supplies, line 610 office supplies, because I moved from the visitor center over to Fiddler's Canyon. There was some unforeseen expense in that I don't have access to those high-speed printers, and I've got some smaller printers in my office that are, those small printers they're pretty high cost per copy. So I've been really cutting back. I haven't spent a whole lot, but my office supply budget went south real quick. So when I moved, and so I've been really watching how many copies I make, and trying to get by on. If I have any really big long runs, I'll take it over to Stephanie over at the visitor center. So that doesn't look good that I've spent that much this quickly, but that was just simply because of the move. The 2016 SHSP grant, which actually closes out at the end of next month in June, I've managed to spend it down to there's only about $265 left in that grant. I just bought a satellite phone and a base station for it cost about $5,000 of grant money for Brian Head in order to enhance their communications ability. This winter was a real good, was a good wake-up call that if something happens, they're not going to be able to communicate. So I located a satellite phone, got their base station, antennas, and everything for them. Cost about $5,000, and I bought a lot of sandbags for the county using that grant money, and I restocked our supplies. So we're pretty current on that 2016. I'll start working on 2017 monies. Sent 1,000 sandbags over to Parowan, sent 1,000 sandbags over to Paraguna, and thanks to the Sheriff's Department, we've got around 4,000 filled sandbags in a Connex in Cedar.
I wonder if these in Parowan, they've been filled. I helped, the Scout organization, different people have helped fill those, and they're sitting out, and it's been warmed up and then cooled, and warmed up and then cooled, and I don't know if anybody's even taken one sandbag. So we ought to find a place to put those inside so the bags don't rot, and we can use them in the future. But
well, thanks to the jail and the Sheriff's Department, they put ours in Cedar in the Connex, and yes, that'll prolong the life of those bags for a lot longer.
That's a great idea, because in Cedar City they've always had some pallets by the Public Works where people could just grab them, but the sun rots them. So
yep,
maybe we ought to put a Connex box there and put sandbags on the side so people open the doors, and that might be a better way to store them.
Yep.
In all areas where we need them, whether it's over here at Parowan or Cedar. And so, and I'm in the process of reconstituting the county training and exercise committee, which I guess was constituted in 2017, and then it never went anywhere. And that's I've included the Sheriff's Department, Cedar Fire, the airport, the hospital. We're going to have our first meeting tomorrow, and so that we can coordinate all of our training and exercise, because right now everybody's operating in a silo, and it's just not a good thing. We can all, if we're all training and exercising together and on the same subject matter, it's going to be a lot easier for us to keep track of all that. So we're going to see if we can't kick that off and get everybody involved.
Are you going to coordinate that with the LEPC or?
No, this is strictly from standpoint of emergency management and the response organizations.
Okay.
And that's about it.
Good.
Any questions?
No.
No, thank you very much. Appreciate that good report. Commissioners, do you have anything?
Just one. This last Saturday, the Children's Justice Center did their annual 5K run. It's kind of a fundraiser / more of a PR public awareness. They opened the center to kind of free access and give tours of the center. There was a neighbor apparently that just moved in just across from the Children's Justice Center this year, and there's loud music, and this year was an 80s theme, so it was lots of bright colored people running around, and this neighbor kind of came over and said, "What's the deal? What's all this noise this first thing in the morning?" And they said, "This is what it is." And she's like, "Sweet." She paid the admission right there and got a T-shirt and did the run.
Excellent.
It was I don't know how much they made on the event, but it was they had over 300 participants, and it was a really good time. A lot of awareness and a lot of opportunity to talk about the problems that the CJC deals with. So it was a great event.
That's a lot, yeah. 300. I don't know if that's more than ever.
That's about it seems to climb a little bit. I think it was close to what they had last year, maybe a little bit more. It was a little bit chillier this year.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's kind of good if you're running.
It is good. Yeah, the colder the better.
Okay, very good.
I just report on. We did a field trip. There was actually 2 events that same day that conflicted. There was the E&I conservation tour where they toured some of the LIPA and LISA pivots. Lee Hewlett over there has, I think, 5 pivots, converted that. And then, so there was that going on, and then we did a field trip out to the West Desert, followed the pipeline route where the pipeline would go. That was interesting. Paul Briggs came from the BLM, and we're really fortunate to have Paul in there. He's doing a great job, and he's great to work with. So.
Okay, yeah.
I had an opportunity to go on the E&I tour.
Oh, did you? Good.
Yeah, I went with Mike Worthen, and it was a windy day, and we were out there. What was his name? Lee Hewlett.
Lee Hewlett. Mm-hmm.
And we were in his field, and we were downwind of the pivot, and there wasn't a drop of water making it to us. It was really interesting to watch it just kind of go right to the ground. They talked about how, in corn it doesn't bother it too bad, and right. Because they are lower to the ground. And they said actually when the canopy gets above the sprinkler, there's almost no loss,
right? Because
it's below the canopy.
Right.
And then we went over to the Lazy River, and then we looked at the recharge basin that has been scarified. There was a pretty good pond there, and the generator was running. It was a good day for it to kind of. The day I had been once previous, and the generator wasn't running that day. I think there was some technical problems with it or something. And then we went over to the western pit, and I was going to pull up some pictures because it was astounding how much water was going into that pit. I mean, it's even slowed down since then.
So just to give you an idea, for a while there, we were taking a full pipe, which is 50 CFS, and that's 100 acre-feet a day going into that pit. In fact, there's a little bit of water. There's a little bit of water ponding in the pit next to it. Because the water table's coming up so high that it's creating a lake in the other pit. Western's watching it close. We're probably okay, but once the irrigators turn on their pumps, it'll drop. But just to give you an idea, if in 10 days, at 100 acre-feet a day in 10 days, that's basically 1/7 of our deficit in Iron County. So it's a lot of water that we put in that pit.
That is crazy. And it was, I should have pulled up some pictures. It's a pretty good lake sitting right there. I don't know how deep it is.
It's a 12-acre lake.
Yeah, and I don't know how deep it is, but wow, it was something else. Like they had one of their conveyors, and it was about to be submerged. And I'm sure it was an older one, but.
Mike could take his jet skis down there and ride them.
Go jet
ski
down
there. Let's do it.
There's a pretty good little ramp there. At least there was. Although I will say I had a concern just with all the industrial usage. We were able to secure funding for the LIPA and LISA.
LIPA. Well, it's one's low elevation precision application, one's low elevation spray application.
Okay.
They're basically the same thing.
But basically high efficiency, through the. And I would love to see the schools, university, the city, cemetery have, and maybe they already do, but have some smart timers. I bought one for a rental property I own for a couple $100, and it's paid for itself 10 times over.
Right.
Because it won't run when it's rained or if it's freezing or whatever. And it bothers me to drive around Cedar because, in particular, that water all comes out of the aquifer. Whereas in Summit and Parowan and some of these other places, it's surface water more. But we're using water out of the aquifer to water when it does not need to be watered.
Right. Well, amazing, yeah. Almost everybody on the gravity water systems over here shut off their sprinklers. And so we've turned the water back into the sewer lagoons, and where it goes down really quickly, the old abandoned sewer lagoons that have a lot of gravel. So it's it's interesting when it's really droughty. You get a deficit, and then it's worse because you pump so much more. Anyway, right now we're gaining heavily. Nothing's growing, but we're gaining. We're gaining heavily. So I know when they have the data come out next year in the annual water book for each of the valleys, you'll see an uptick. It happened in 2005. There was actually a little uptick because we've had for 40 years, a gradual decline. But there was actually, and after a year like this, there will be a little bit of an uptick, and so that'll be very welcome. But anyway, I also attended the Western Interstate Region Conference in Spokane, as did Cindy. They had some interesting things there. They took us to their landfill, and they incinerate everything. And it was quite an amazing operation, but the problem is it cost $107 a ton. That's their tipping fees, and ours are $22. So anyway, I don't think we'll be doing that anytime soon. Extremely expensive. I mean, and of course, and it's an enterprise fund, so people pay for it through their fees. But it was an interesting thing to see. Have two massive incinerators. And they also took us to Fire Air Base. These people, it's private, but these people would move from Kingman, Arizona to some other place to now Spokane. They keep moving around. But they had $32 million aircraft that are made specifically for firefighting, because a few years ago, you remember the crashes, and well over the years, and so the government shut everything down and said we're going to have fire-specific aircraft. These things are amazing. They had a couple of them called super scoopers that actually go down and scoop water up and then dump it on the fire, and they can do retardant in those too, but they generally just scoop. And anyway, so that was pretty amazing to see that and know that we have that kind of thing available to us in these fires. But and of course there's always WIR, there's always a lot of good classes and networking regarding public land, so it was a good conference. Do you have anything to add, Cindy?
It would be probably good for Southern Utah to have Mark Murphy in leadership.
Yeah, Mark's the new second vice president of WIR, so never been to Spokane before. It's beautiful. Boy, there's a big river through the middle there. Swift, and oh boy. There's enough water. I figured that while I was standing there for 30 minutes or so looking at that river, there was probably more water went by me than we use in this valley in a year. Anyway, it's always fun to go where they have water. Anyway, we will take a short break and be back to reconvene in about 5 minutes.
So,
John?
I'm going to be gone 24th. We have county commission meeting that day, right? So I'll be gone that day. I'm going to be in the Philippines. My son's getting married over there. So.
Oh, cool.
For what you did on Eagle Valley,
I
right?
just sent you an invite, and then I may have hit cancel instead of add. Yeah, I sent it to. If you didn't get it, I'll redo it. It's the next. Okay, I think I hit, instead of hit add, I think I hit cancel and erased it before I sent it. So it's the next Indigent Defense Commission meeting, and they're open to the public.
Oh, so we could go with that. Good, awesome.
It's not till September.
Okay.
Do you know who's supposed to sign that agreement for trees and
He'll be here on the 24th of June. He's got a wedding in the Philippines.
Well, I
So.
think it would be the county commissioner, chairman, but
Well, I mean, we've signed it, but who counted
Should be,
it?
what is,
well, they were going to take a
24th
grant to
of June.
each
Okay.
I'm here.
Say no, you better.
homeowner individually to have that homeowner sign off.
I'll be here by myself.
I'll be
tomorrow.
gone.
Okay, we're back. First item, number 1, public comment period. Excuse me. 3-minute limit. Please read the instructions regarding comments. Is there anyone that'd like to come forward and make a comment, public comment? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move.
Let's say, are these comments or questions?
Either.
Either. Oh, I'd like to then. Yes.
Okay,
Come up to
forward.
the microphone if you would. Tell us your name.
How you guys doing today?
Good.
My name's Dustin Langston. I actually live out near about 4,000 west, 3,000 north, so somewhat close to this. And I'm actually not opposing the road at all at this point, but the question arises, I know this has been on the county commission plan for 12 plus years at this point, but I was wondering if there's been a reassessment of the need for the road, and if this coal company, Alton Coal, is still pushing for this new beltway. That's my main question.
Definitely. Well, actually, with Alton Coal coming and a growing county, we felt the need to have this beltway because of it'll alleviate congestion, in the inner city. At this point, of course, Alton Coal is going to come right down 56 and go out to Iron Springs Road to their loading tipple that will be built.
We know, so they're actually building infrastructure. So that's what this is about. Because my understanding was they were already trucking coal through Iron County, and I've never seen one of their coal trucks.
They are, but just slightly. They just come down 20 and head north, so they're just hitting a few miles at the very north end. Yeah. So, but it's not just because of Alton Coal.
Oh, absolutely not.
There's all.
I understand because I work out in the industrial plaza, WL Plastics mechanical engineer out there, and this would be a huge help for all those trucks as well, just to completely avoid mainly Highway 56 and the northbound interstate on-ramp, because that light backs up like crazy all the time.
Depending on Alton Coal's lifespan, they might be done mining coal before we even get that road built.
That is correct. So that was the whole point of this is, is this a big push just for them, or is this just county in general?
It's not just for them, no. Just good future planning because, we are a growing county. And
absolutely. This will actually shorten my commute up to Perrin when I have family up here. So this will be a lot nicer than having to weave through all the dirt roads and backcountry roads to get to the interstates.
There you go.
Nice.
We want to get this route planned out and easements acquired before we get in trouble.
That's my next question.
Thinking way
is
ahead.
the easements. So is this going to be, I know the Sherritts own a lot of land along this roadway. Is the county going to be going and buying this land? Is this going to be a eminent domain kind of scenario?
All of the above. Have you ever traveled on our new Southern Belt route?
Always. Yeah, I use it all the time.
So there was actually some of that property that was, the easement was donated because they wanted the improvement and they were happy. So some of both.
Did you eminent domain any of that?
We didn't eminent domain one parcel at all.
Wonderful.
We had to purchase some, yes, definitely, but there wasn't any eminent domain. There was a little teeny bit that was tribal, and that was probably the hardest, just because we had to go through all the federal hoops. But that was taken care of, and
now they're building a trucking plaza because of it. So good
yeah,
job.
so there you go.
Well, cool. That's all my questions. I just want to make sure we're staying away from eminent domain and taking of land. So
yeah, we really don't want to have to do eminent domain.
While he's talking, you'll address that. Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So
thanks. Yeah.
Thank you.
Glad you came
Good work
today.
on this. I like the new idea of it. So I'm curious what my neighbor Bruce Anderson's going to think of it, because it's kind of in his front yard. So we'll have to see from there, though.
Okay. He's an employee of the county.
Yes, he is.
So I'll have to.
You should set up a lemonade stand.
Yeah, you can set up a lemonade stand. There you go. Okay. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move to item 5 first, which is the belt route, because some of these gentlemen have other commitments. And so Reed Erickson is here to start that discussion regarding Cedar Valley Belt Route alignment as recommended by Horrocks Engineering, the Iron County Transportation Rural Planning Organization, and the Iron County Planning Commission review of a potential date for a presentation by the consultant and a public hearing, which will tentatively be June 10th, 2019. Reed Erickson, our county planner. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you. I will start by confirming that is a confirmed date. We have
advertise for a public hearing on June 10th, as long as that's going to work with you guys' schedule. And also, the consultant is available and will be here then. When I sent in the agenda request, I didn't have confirmation yet of him being able, and so since that time I have. And so I'd like to just make that formal that we will have a public hearing on June 10th. And
Okay.
so prior to that
Is
public
that,
hearing,
that's not a commission meeting day, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, the calendar falls weird there.
second Monday.
I don't know why I was thinking it was June 8th. Okay, we're good. Thank you.
I hope it's June 10th, because
Okay.
that's what we've advertised for.
Very good.
And that's when the consultant will come. Aaron Baker from Horrocks Engineering will be here to make a formal presentation and give a little more explanation as to the rationale behind their recommendations, and go walk through the process a little bit. So I thought it would be good to just get here, get it on the agenda, let people know it's coming, and just help advertise that public hearing. We will send an email notice to everybody that has made a comment that we have email addresses for, and let them know as well. But I wanted to make sure, you know, that schedule would work and we would go forward. So I just wanted to review briefly the process, where we're at, what we've been doing, and kind of respond to some of the questions that you've already discussed. This is a long-term planning process. This is not a result of Alton Coal wanting to come and have another route out to the mine. Their most direct route is I-15 and Highway 56 out. So any belt route option wouldn't actually be as direct and as fast for them, but there was some consideration given early on that because they were coming and they were a mineral producing entity, that might help us with funding to build the belt route, because the CIB is a good source for funding to build that route, and because we're not normally a contributing county to the mineral severance, and we wouldn't as likely get as much money from them, since this is a direct impact from the mineral extraction, then the royalties would help pay for that. We don't know that that's even a possibility, and that was the only consideration given to really doing it in relation to the coal trucks. It's not a coal haul route. It's not designed for that, and it's not being planned for that. It's being planned for future growth in Iron County and the ability to move traffic around Iron County and avoid congested areas. So it is a long-term planning process, and that's why the study was done to pick an alignment and to identify that alignment so that we could start acquiring rights of way when properties become available. So the theory is that with the local corridor preservation fund, we're collecting $10 a registration on all vehicles. We have money in a pool that can be used for right-of-way acquisition. And so it does two things for us. It allows a funding source to acquire rights of way when they become available, and it helps plan for other future development and projects so that, like you mentioned, we avoid conflict in the future. As development occurs, we can say, this is where the belt route goes, let's make provisions for the belt route. Let's make sure we don't build something and then later say, oh gosh, we really need a good corridor through there for transportation. So the idea is to plan ahead, look down the road, acquire rights of way when they're available through the Corridor Preservation Fund, assist with development, and help development plan where the best places for their development will be in relation to a good transportation corridor. So that's really what's behind it and why we're moving it along. As listed on the agenda, it has been before the Planning Commission. They held a public hearing, recommended the alignment that we will look at here. It's also been to the Rural Planning Transportation Organization, and they, both the technical and executive committees, and they have looked at this and said, yeah, we like that alignment. There are some modifications that can still be made as we go along. This is not a line that's just cast in stone. It is an opportunity to identify corridors and work with individual property owners and find the best possible option within a preferred corridor. Okay, so it's not the exact foot on the line on the property, but it's this general area, and then we work with property owners. In fact, prior to the public hearing, we will have a meeting with one of the property owners and look at their property. Spencer Jones has a fair amount of property on the very east end of this as it hits the frontage road, and we're going to meet with him and, you know, see what are the best options for him. So that process has started, but I just wanted to make everyone aware of the Belt Route Alignment Study interactive story map that's on the county website. This is what it looks like. You can go through and you can look at, you know, what's behind it, an explanation of purpose. And there's a lot of information here that can provide. I just want to jump. It's a good resource if somebody is interested in looking at, you know, what's behind it, and a lot of other information about the Summit Interchange redesign, different options and schedules, and who we receive comments from. But if you go to the last page under the final recommendation and the recommended alignment, this gives you an interactive map that you can zoom in on. You can see individual properties. So you can kind of see where everything falls, and as you zoom in, you can see the properties. And so I just wanted to take, there's a 4-minute video. I wanted to just show you that, if you have time to watch that really quick. It's kind of a neat overfly of the area, and I'll kind of describe that as it goes along. This starts right at Highway 56 on the south end at 5700 West, which is the intersection. You can see here, this is looking north. The intersection for the 5700s on the south side is just right here, and that's already constructed. So we would just continue on from 5700 west going north. This is, I'll just stop it right here. This is the industrial area right here. This is Highway 50, or Iron Springs Road right here. And so you can kind of see where things line up.
Reed, is this the review and comment on Cedar Valley Belt Route Plan? Or where is it on the website?
Yes, it's the very first thing under latest news, under the county website. If you click on the latest news for the Belt Route, then this presentation comes up and you click on that, and then you can go through any of the information.
What is that intersection going to look like, by the way, with the dump road and this new beltway? Because that's kind of a strange intersection.
Yeah.
That can become a four-way stop. Is that?
Those are engineering design issues that will be addressed at the time that we get ready to do design and build. Okay. Those things haven't been determined yet. This is kind of a 50,000-foot view. We don't have the details of all of those design issues yet.
Yeah, I was thinking about this just last night, because there's two roads that are going to be 55-mile-an-hour speed limits right.
Yeah.
Well,
the belt route would be the priority route, and then we would probably take Iron Springs Road and then come in on a 90, you know, and redesign that intersection. So the belt route would have priority. Most likely, the only place that there may be on the belt route that you would have to stop is at Minersville Highway. Minersville Highway would have the priority going north and south, Highway 130, but that's probably the only one. Everything else is going to be priority of the belt route, and so there would be limited access. This is a very limited access highway.
Or do some overpasses eventually.
Yeah.
They're very expensive.
There are options, and we would, you know, consider that as we also look at railroad crossings and everything else. So this is as it goes north here. There's been a lot of discussion about going through the center of this pivot right here. Coming up is the railroad crossing right here. The preference by the consultants is that would be a separated grade crossing, recognizing that an overpass over the railroad, which we've had a lot of discussion on the railroad, and we can get into a lot of these specifics as we go along. But this is staying on 5700. You see on the right there the solar farm of the Bullock, on the Bullock property. Coming up to north 3200 north would be this corner right here that it's coming up on. After it gets north of the solar farm, then it would swing and go east. And the original design went a little bit more northerly, northeasterly. This goes a little more easterly before it turns and goes north. We're just crossing, this would be 4500 west right here and 3600 north. As we continue east, this would be crossing, coming up here, this is 4000 north. And so you mentioned Bruce Anderson. Bruce Anderson lives down here. It came closer to his place before, but now it swings much further east before it goes north. So it's not in that neighborhood. We had quite a few conflicts in that neighborhood.
Is that 2300 or Lund?
That this is that was 2300. This is 4000 north, and Lund Highway is what we'll run parallel with right here. So we're west of Lund Highway. This is coming up on Mid Valley Road right here. So we'd cross at Mid Valley Road just on the west side of these two pivots. There is a frontage road that runs along here that would provide access to these homes. We would be on the east side of that and on the west side of the pivots. Going up, this is crossing Lund Highway right here. So this is Lund Highway. This is 5600 north. That would be the intersection at which it crosses Lund Highway. And again, it would have the priority over Lund Highway. And then we just generally swing north and then east at 6400 north. This is 6400 north, which we need to be that far north to get north of these subdivisions that are in here. There's a lot of subdivided lots in this area, and 6400 takes us across the north end of those and makes a good alignment all the way across the valley. We're coming up on Minersville Highway here just a little bit. There's a pretty good stretch out across here on the north leg at 6400 north. There's been some consideration maybe swinging down at 6200 and crossing over, but a lot depends. This is Minersville Highway there we just crossed. This is where the Clarks are. This is that subdivision that has been vacated or abandoned. You can just see across here the north end of a pivot coming out across, and this is where we'll meet with Spencer Jones and look at the alignment through this area.
Real quick, just
this is his lambing sheds right here. So he likes this alignment, but maybe we'd stay down just a little bit lower before we come up. Those are the details that we'll work with individual property owners.
wasn't the issue going 6200. There's some bad soils too that we'd have to filter.
Yeah, we want to stay up above some of this stuff right here and not come out at 6,000.
6,000 area, the kind of marshy.
Yeah, the Graben. That's where the Graben is. This is 6,000 north right here, right where it comes into the old Enoch Road, where that crosses right here. And then again, the details will probably stay. You can see, this canyon. We would more likely be on the north side of this canyon rather than on the south side, so that we have better exposure for the sun. Just details like that, but it's all the same property owner, and we'll work with those and as we get closer to engineering and working it out with the property owner so that they
That's not the big canyon. That's actually the one to the south.
That's to the south of the big Braffitts Creek.
Bill and I hiked up that canyon, looked at it. It's nice. It's a nice.
It's not too bad
bad
at all. And this would come out to the interstate. This is I-15 right here. This is the frontage road. This would be at about milepost 57. When you drive back to Cedar the next time, just look at the very lowest spot as you're going along. You can kind of see it from further out, and it just kind of drops down and then starts coming back up. The furthest Enoch development is down in this area right here, or excuse me, back in this area right here.
67, milepost 67?
67, yes, I'm sorry.
57's a
Yeah,
town,
67.1.
So it's north of Webster's Hill, right?
Yes.
Yep, Webster's Hill's just right
Okay.
here
Okay.
in this area. So yeah, it's just north of that. You can see that the last Enoch Road that comes out is right here.
You're right. Okay.
Where that development, those storage yards and things like that are that you see along the interstate. So it's just north of that. It's right in the low spot. And then we would take the frontage road. This doesn't show it, but the frontage road then would just go up to the Summit interchange. The likelihood in the future that there would be a future interchange here. This is the location that Enoch City had proposed for a new interchange when they did an evaluation, and it seems to be the best location for an interchange in the future. And so with using the existing infrastructure on the frontage road, then we can just come up to the interchange right there and then have access going north onto that interchange and getting off for people to come around the belt route. You can look at some of the other, if you go back on the study here, you can see a lot of the other options. We had, you know, looked at a number of different options, and we can evaluate those. You can look at an advantages and disadvantages interactive map that gives all of the segments and all of the options that we looked at and evaluated, and the pros and cons of each of those options. You can also, on this particular map, click on the little dollar sign for each segment, and you can produce a cost estimate for that particular segment, and it'll come up in a sheet telling what all of the costs are, design, the amount, and what section that covers. So for this section right here, engineers' estimates were $7.2 million. So all that information is in this story map. It's really nice, a lot of good details there, and it's on the county website and can be used for, you know.
So looking at that route, I mean, if you had an Alton Cole, would they, I mean, there would be, I mean, obviously the I-15, 56 is the most efficient for them.
Yeah.
Would there be any?
There really wouldn't be any advantage for them to go around that way.
Would they agree to use that, or I mean, because as they hit 56, they're going to have to make a left-hand turn and then make another left onto Iron Springs Road to get to their, unless you have an exit onto Iron Springs Road of some kind. Well, I guess, I mean, if we don't have an overpass there, you'd obviously be able to make a right-hand turn on it. But.
Right. A lot of those things would be determined, you know, in the future.
Another question, Reed, on
I
that.
can't see the top of that screen. I've got it. Oh, here I can.
Oh.
Let me just go back to the.
It's on the monitor's okay, but it's not on the TV okay.
Yeah.
So we'd talked about that first segment not making that jog right off 57, but going straight to avoid the mills and then make a jog there. Is that, when you talked to Horowitz about this?
Yeah, they looked at that. That's something that we've got to discuss further. There are, I don't know what happened there, but. I was going to zoom into that area real quick.
Oh.
I can't see the bottom. Am I on the large screen there?
Yeah. What are you trying to
Can you
get to?
get me off of that?
I can't. I don't have any control.
Don't know why it's.
It's funny. It
My
doesn't come
window
up on
went
these
away, and I
monitors, but it
can't
does on
see
TV.
the window here to get off of the large screen. So anyway, there are some options there in terms of that. There's just more houses in the way of that, and those are the pluses and minuses that we can discuss, you know, as we look forward. But there's less disturbance staying right on 5700 because we have an light industrial area, and we've already acquired half of that right away through some of that section. But it's still an option to swing wider and look at that.
So does this get dedicated to UDOT later, or? And what about access? The reason I ask is I know that UDOT can be kind of finicky about granting access. Are we not going to grant much access?
We will have a access plan with this that would have limited access on this. We would treat it like a highway, and it would have limited access. So we would determine where access points would occur. It would be the county's road to start with. If at some future point there became enough traffic and we could convince UDOT to take it over and become a state highway, then yes, it could happen. But it's just like right now on the Iron Springs Road. We've been having that discussion and saying, you know, really from the Y, it could be a state highway because of all of the commerce and the things that are occurring out there, and would love to give that to the UDOT, but it's not anticipated at this time. This would be a county road.
Okay.
So that's really all the information, Commissioners. I just wanted to kind of get it back on the radar and make people aware of what we were trying to do, and make sure people are aware for the benefit of the public hearing and getting the information out there. Any questions?
Okay. Question? Guess not. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Nice to have the interactive. So we
There's
can
a lot of good information there. Get around and dig around in on that story map. There's a lot of good information.
really is. Thank
That'll
you.
help us for the future.
Absolutely. Okay, back to item 2, public hearing and possible approval of a zone change from industrial to A20, 148.56 acres in the south 1/2, section 28, township 36 south, range 13 west, Salt Lake Basin Meridian, located at approximately 11,900 west, Highway 56, Cedar City. Recommended for approval by the Iron County Planning Commission. Reed Erickson will also be presenting this proposal.
I'll just have John scroll through these. These are in your packet. This is just PDF slides of the PowerPoint presentation we used at the Planning Commission. But I wanted to just introduce that. As you slide down just a little bit, John, you can see the area. It's out on Highway 56, just before the Comstock Road at approximately 119th west. So there's a road that runs up there. Go ahead, John, move to the next one. You can see specifically the area that was being proposed where the star is. There are 2 lots there. They made the original application. And this is an ownership map. All of the clear areas are private property and the yellow areas are BLM. So you can see that this is an area that's enclosed by public land. And if you go to the next slide, John, this zoning map, you can see that those 2 parcels where the star is were the applicants. That property, all of the gray property is zoned industrial, and the yellower, clearer property is A20, and then there's a little patch of R5 down there in the bottom right. To the next map, we zoom in and evaluate that a little closer. After sending letters to the surrounding property owners and getting comments back that they also wanted to be included in this zone change, when we looked at the map and saw what was left there of industrial, and there are already homes on them, the Planning Commission recommended that we include those additional lots. That was staff's recommendation. Planning Commission's recommendation also included that we include the entirety of that area that's in the blue there. You can see what's currently zoned agricultural 20, and then the rest of all of that is industrial. And so our recommendation was to rezone the entire, I think we had 7 parcels there.
Question while you're right there. Do you know why it was zoned industrial in the first place?
That whole area was zoned industrial because of the mining out there. And then as residential kind of started to encroach, they rezoned some of it, and that was just what was left. And so
Okay.
the interest is, John, go ahead to the next.
Got a question back here from Cindy.
Do you know if any of that's in the Black Iron RDA?
I don't think so. I think that that is further north and west of this property. I don't think it extends as far south. We look at that, but I don't think it does.
It doesn't look like it to me.
Yeah, I don't think it is. If you go to the next slide, I think there's a total of 7 properties, totally 148.56 acres that's left zoned industrial that we'd like to have recommended. The Planning Commission recommended to go to A20. The next slide are the 2 properties that were the property owners who submitted the application. On the next slide is public hearing, and then that was the introduction. I think we can hold the public hearing, and then I'll come back and respond to some of the other criteria.
Thank you. Okay, the public hearing is open on this suggested approval change of zoning from industrial to A20. Anyone with a comment regarding this issue, please come forward and state your name. Second call. Seeing none, the public hearing is closed, and we'll turn it back to Reed for more explanation.
John, if you go to the next slide and scroll right to the bottom of that, there's a criteria in the Iron County policy for evaluating considerations for rezoning property. And on the very bottom of that, there's a paragraph that I just wanted to read to remind the commission. I don't know if you can scroll down just a little more.
Sorry, I was getting
bottom
the
of that.
screen back up for the...
Zone changes are legislative decisions made by the county legislative body with broad governmental discretion and must advance some legitimate public interest. The standard review to grant or deny zone changes can be described as reasonably debatable, and in consideration of the items 1 through 13, the public concern input can be seen as acceptable factor in considering public interest. In other words, public clamor is really the only place that it has a role in decision making with legislative decisions. We don't really have that as a factor in administrative decisions like conditional use permits and subdivisions and things like that, where the legislative decisions have already been made to determine what the rules are. Once they meet the rules, they're entitled to a permit. There are no rules for zone changes. Those are legislative decisions where the governing body has broad discretion. We've identified 13 criteria that may be used in consideration of zone changes, and those are things that the Planning Commission looks at and staff looks at. As you scroll through those are really looking at things that are feasibility of the likelihood that they can do what would be allowed in the zone. So there's really more likelihood that they can do all of the things that are in A20 than industrial, because there are not services out in that area for industrial developments. There's not good road access, for industrial development. And so it makes more sense to go to A20 because they can do more of the things that are identified in the zoning district of agricultural 20. And so we just look at all of the benefits, transportation, water, sewer, drainage, all of those things from a feasibility level, and those are things that you can consider when you're looking at zone changes. You determine what's in the best interest of the public, and that's the discretion or the consideration for this decision. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion before we call for a vote or for a motion?
I'll move to change the zone of the 7 properties that Reed discussed from industrial to A20. That includes 148.56 acres in the south 1/2, section 28 township, 36 south, range 13 west, Salt Lake Basin Meridian, located in approximately 11,900 west, Highway 56, Cedar City.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve a zone change from industrial to A20, 148.56 acres as described in the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, now public hearing and possible approval. This is item number 3, possible approval of a zone change from R5 to commercial 4.01 acres in the southwest 1/4, section 27, township 35 south, range 11 west, Salt Lake Basin Meridian, located at approximately 3169 North Bulldog Road, Cedar City, recommended for approval by the Iron County Planning Commission. We'll have information from Reed again before we open the public hearing.
Thank you, Commissioner. I might just mention on the last one, just for your information, after the Planning Commission made the recommendation to include those additional properties that were not part of the application, we sent letters to those property owners asking them to let us know if they had any concerns. We explained that the Planning Commission recommended that their properties be included with this zone change. Haven't heard a thing from anybody other than one property owner who said, yes, I am very interested. And he had already contacted me previously and wanted to be included and wanted to know what he needed to do to be included. So there was no one who was adverse to that. This one, if you'll scroll down just a little bit, is located on Bulldog Road, just south of what Bulldog Meats is, just north of the intersection of 3000 North and Bulldog Road, where the star is. On the next slide, it shows just an aerial of the area and what the current land uses are. This property is currently in agricultural production and is just the second property north, as you can see, from the intersection of 3000 North and Bulldog Road. The next slide shows the zoning in the area. You can see that there's just a little bit of a commercial just to the north of that. This property would fit in the area of R5 with a lot of R5 around it. If you go to the next slide, you can see that it's within the airport overlay, and so residential is not allowed at any higher density north of 3,000 than 1 per 5 acres. And so they didn't feel like that they could get the most use out of that property and had better benefit as commercial property with commercial properties to the north of it. They felt like that it would be more useful to them. And so the Planning Commission evaluated that, and because of the restrictions of the airport overlay and the consideration for a good access on the property and services available, felt that it would be a reasonable request and would not be adverse to the area. You can see, if you go back to the last slide, you can see the dotted lines there show that Enoch City is located just to the northeast and Cedar City just to the south and to the west. In approaching both cities, they expressed no concern with this rezoning and no interest in annexing those properties.
Where the annex areas overlap, right in that area.
Yeah, it's in the tier 2, but their annexation declaration used to overlap, but now Enoch City's only goes to Bulldog Road. Doesn't go on the west side of Bulldog Road. So there's not a conflict, but since they were close enough to both of them, we contacted both of them, and they both saw no concern with their future plans or conflicts with that. So next slide, John. Well, I think even then, yeah, as we looked at sewer as available with Cedar City Sewer System, it's currently on a private well. Water from both the Conservancy District, Enoch City or Cedar City is quite a distance from there and would be pretty arduous. So we talked about annexation considerations. This 4 acres was part of a larger parcel. They have 4 parcels all there together, and so we are in the process and have reviewed and have application for a lot line adjustment that would carve off this 4 acres and readjust the lot line so that there are no new lots being created. It's not a subdivision, but it is being created as a 4.01 acres, so we're only zoning an entire parcel instead of cutting through the middle of a parcel. Because of the way that the ditches and the fences run, they just wanted to use this front piece. And so we are breaking that off, or doing a lot line adjustment to create this parcel. The next slide, I think, is probably the public hearing.
Thank you very much for that explanation. Chair declares the public hearing open. If there are comments on this zone change approval from R5 to commercial in the North Bulldog Road area in Cedar City, please come forward. Seeing none, no comments, Chair declares the public hearing closed, and I would entertain Reed will give more explanation.
Well, we just, I think the next slide again just shows the considerations for zoning, and I just wanted to mention that as the Planning Commission evaluated that, they recognized that a zone change would allow any use that can be done in commercial. This particular property owner is interested in doing some storage, their personal storage, private rented storage, building a larger building and had space in it as part of what he's using, and then wanted to rent some of it out, and so just wanted to not get crosswise with the rules and thought it would be appropriate to do this. So even though anything else could happen that is allowed in commercial, that's what the intended use is currently. I just want to mention that.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion.
I would move to approve zone change from R5 to commercial, 4.01 acres in the southwest quarter, section 27, township 35 south, range 11 west, Salt Lake Basin Meridian, located at approximately 3169 North Bulldog Road.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve a zone change from R5 to commercial at the property described in the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 4, discussion and possible approval of a local consent for a full-service restaurant liquor license located at 3052 North Iron Springs Road, Cedar City, requested by Bowman Cowboy Kitchen, LLC. Who is speaking to this.
I can speak to that, I think. Yeah, so this is a local consent form. They will be serving alcohol. They have, seemed like there were more pages to this. Basically, it's requesting issuance of a full-service restaurant liquor license to Bowman Cowboy Kitchen LLC, again located at 3052 North Iron Springs Road. I think that's all the information I have. I know they are in business. I think they're looking to get that liquor license.
Okay, thank you, staff. Chad, is there any thing in our ordinances that would be preclude this approval? Any concerns from staff? Or?
Oh, in fact, I ate lunch there day before yesterday. The hamburgers are fantastic. I would give a shout out as I would to any Iron County eating establishment, but they've really done a good job out there. I've been out there a couple of times, and they're still in the process of kind of expanding, but it's really good, and it's kind of a cool atmosphere. So
Ditto, it's very good. Yep. I'll make that motion to approve local consent for a full service restaurant to liquor license for the Bowman Kitchen, Cowboy Kitchen.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve a full-time a liquor license for the Bowman Cowboy Kitchen located at 3052 North Iron Springs Road, Cedar City. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Done item 5, on to personnel. Chad, would you step across the hall there and see if Adrian's right there in his office, please?
That moved quick enough. Maybe it caught him by surprise.
No, we went along quickly. I've got to go get a burger at Bowman's.
You're making me
my
hungry.
mouth water just talking about it.
I'm sorry, I was listening in there, but it kind of snuck up on me there for a minute.
You're fine.
Sorry for the delay. Oh, and I walked out without my agenda. Can I borrow yours? So, we have, let's see, so there's, two new hires. Let's do the two new hires. The first one is under 6B, and then the second one is 6C. 6B being new hire Trevor McNeil, hired recently as a corrections deputy, effective June 2nd, 2019 is his start date. He is presently certified and an experienced corrections deputy. He actually has 12 plus years in corrections. I can't remember the facility. I want to say Beaver. Okay.
I happen to know him.
Yeah, good. So for that reason, just per policy, he's coming in a little bit above the minimum in the range. But he's planning on starting the 2nd of June. The next new hire is Braden Beaumont, who we've interviewed and selected to fill the seasonal outdoor maintenance technician for natural resources. He's going to start on the 3rd of June. And that was a new position that was budgeted this year just to help with some of the trails. They've talked about putting in some new kiosks. I think that's what they're called, like the signs and things at some of the trailheads.
Have Mike take just a couple of minutes and just explain the
Didn't even
scope
see
of
you,
this
Mike.
job? He just barely snuck in behind you.
Okay, what the position is to, we've got three and four probably this week, trail segments in Iron County approved for OHV trails, but we have not been able to put markers up designating this is an OHV trail. So Braden will be doing a lot of that on the county roads. We're still waiting for the BLM to do their part on the NEPA so we can mark out on the BLM lands. But anyway, his main duties will be to mark the trails, put in about 3 kiosks that we've got scheduled, a picnic table that we've got scheduled for the Bald Hills, several things, trim trails, and in a couple of places where it's pretty tough to get through. And anyway, Braden will do an excellent job.
Thanks for that
Should be
explanation.
about 3 months, right, Mike?
Yes.
So just kind of a summer seasonal. He's finishing up. Braden's a college student, and he plans on. I think he's returning to school in August. So, so again, those are the 2 new hires. You want me to do the others, or just
go ahead and do those?
I'd move to approve items number 6, B, and C. In corrections, new hire Trevor McNeil is a corrections deputy effective June 2nd, 2019, and note that is a backfill position. And in natural resource, approval of new hire Braden Beaumont as a seasonal outdoor maintenance technician effective June 3rd of 2019.
Second.
Then moving second that we approve new hires of Trevor McNeil in corrections and Braden Beaumont in natural resources as explained in the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
okay? And 6A and 6D have to do with internal movement and promotion. 6A being in the assessor's office. The assessor, Cindy Bullock, has verified that Teresa Caldwell recently completed the training and certification process to certify her as a personal property specialist. We have a need within the assessor's office due to we have a vacancy in there that we're not sure how long that's going to be, but Teresa is going to fill that personal property specialist position now that that she again has gone through that certification process. Cindy can probably speak to more details, but really with that, it's a promotion moving up. So it's per the policy, it's 5% to be added to her to fill in. I know we didn't talk about Cindy, but really perpetually, right? It's not temporary. We're just gonna. So this is a not interim basis. It's a permanent basis, but especially just kind of a promotion associated with the training and the work that she's now going to be doing. As for 6D, we recently had Sergeant Johnson submit his notice of retirement, which created a vacancy, and the sheriff's office has asked that we approve Caleb Anderson to function in that role on an interim basis until we have a chance to work through the selection process to backfill that position. So with that, again, it would be just a 5% pay increase on an interim basis. Caleb Anderson is one of the corporals that is put in to fill that position, but we haven't gone through the selection process yet. So, and we're asking for that effective date to be May 19th, because actually he has been serving in that role, so hopefully that's okay. And with Teresa Caldwell in the assessor's office, also asking for the effective date on that one to be 5/19. Both those dates just being the beginning of the current pay period.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
I'll make a motion to approve on 6A, the approval of a promotion and a 5% pay increase for Teresa Caldwell as Deputy Assessor. And she'll be working as a personal property specialist, and this will take effect May 19th, 2019. And 6D, in the Sheriff's Department, approval of a promotion and corresponding 5% pay increase for Caleb Anderson. He will serve as the interim sergeant effective May 19th as well. And so that would be a backfill, right, on that one? Or is that just due to resignation and retirement of the...
Yeah, so that'll be backfill.
Okay, right.
Yes.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve of 2 promotions, one in the assessor's office for Teresa Caldwell and one in the sheriff's department for Caleb Anderson, as explained in the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
Section E is a request to update this policy. These are some changes that Lieutenant Schlosser has recently submitted. But I'll go through there and grab the copies of the
You bet. Do you want me to grab them?
Would you mind? So that's the existing policy. I'm sorry, I thought I had these in there, but I forgot that's on the printer there. Again, you'll just see the date on that. It's from 2003. It was in need of being updated in terms of what the sheriff's office is currently doing. At your direction, we can go through each of those updates. It's kind of a short policy, or if I can just summarize saying that they've updated it again to current operations for transportation, meal reimbursement, and time accounting. I can get you these. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
I'm fine with you just going through and doing the updates. Are you fine with that, Commissioner?
Yes.
Okay, so it's been kind of shortened somewhat a little bit, just to match up with and to correct some of the outdated numbers. But in transportation, the main change there is the county, where it says that in the original policy that the employee must provide his or her own transportation while at post. Actually, what's going on there is a sheriff's vehicle is being provided for travel to and from training, along with a gas card. I added the section with some of the changes that are currently being implemented with the Iron County vehicle policy, Section 30, that will probably be coming to the agenda here in the coming weeks, one that Chad Dotson, the county attorney, is working on. I just made that note there that the employee must maintain compliance of that policy, obviously. But again, shorter as to what's exactly being done as opposed to what that 5/27/2003 under transportation. As for meal reimbursement, there was just some clarification there that while the employees are at post, they're being provided 3 meals a day, and there's a meal being provided for the day of travel, on the initial day of travel to post training, as opposed to the or like the per diem that is outlined in the original policy. As for time accounting, the post training is actually 10 hours a day, 4 days a week. And in the original policy, it was referencing 8 hours a day for 5 days a week, but they're actually just doing 4 10s. So that's the major change there. There's no real change to uniform allowance, housing. just matching up to the 4-day training week as opposed to the 5-day training week. With housing, like I say, we provide lodging, usually there at Camp Williams. If it's not available, then we'll do something else in terms of for the accommodation. But it's just for the training days, and then the employees mostly, 99% of the time they're just coming home for the weekends or holidays. But if they elect on their own, for their own choosing to stay there for non-training days, then it's at their expense, not the county's. So again, just bringing it in line in terms of what's actually being done operations-wise to update the needed updates for the policy. So that, in summary, those are the main changes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Dan.
Updating our contract with employees that we send to post with new amounts in light of as we do all the.
For the
We decided that we figured it was probably under what it should be.
I think the one that came up recently were was the training costs associated for the ones that are correction certified that go to patrol. Is that what you're referring to?
So that, we definitely need that agreement, but then we talked about, with this whole recent thing that came up with a previous employee, I think we had decided that the numbers that were in there were not sufficient. When the sheriff's office gave me numbers of what it had cost, it was a lot more than the amount in that contract.
I hadn't heard anything. I'm not working on anything currently, but I'm kind of confused because the numbers that we had in that contract were actually numbers provided by them initially. So if those have changed.
And I think Dale was aware that we need to
I'll touch base with them and see if it's something, because it hasn't been.
While we're touching it, we might as well update that number.
Yeah, none of those figures are in here, so I think we're okay with that. But we'll make sure. I'll reach out to them to make sure, because it hasn't been too long. It's only been a year. I mean, you remember that meeting that we had?
Yeah, it's just.
So I'm not sure where the new numbers are coming from, but I'll follow up with them to see if it's something that needs to be changed on that contract that we're having new hires sign as part of a commitment for reimbursement if they don't stay with the county within employment of the county. I think it's a 2-year commitment is what Dan's referring to.
2 years.
Separate issue, but I'll follow up on that to make sure it's accurate.
Okay, excellent.
I would move for approval of the amended personnel policy, section 41, peace officer standards and training.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve of the amended policy, personnel policy section 41, as explained. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. Item 7, consideration and possible approval of an offer to purchase Iron County-owned real estate. Part of this discussion may be closed. We are going to have to close this. I would entertain a motion to go into closed session for this discussion regarding possible sale of Iron County property.
Move to go into closed session.
Second.
So moved and seconded that we go into closed session. So we will do that at this time.
The motion has to be for the purpose of discussing.
Oh yeah, please.
So move into closed session to move into a strategy session to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we enter closed session, a strategy session to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We will move to closed session. We have no other agenda items, so those who decide to leave at this time, thanks for being here and appreciate it. Chad, did you have?
Can I join you?
Yes.
Right in here. I got it.
On top of something that's gonna make it. Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I hope we get some response. That's been a bummer. Join us for financial crunching. You carrying this to,
I think it was, John had it.
okay, I already signed it previously, so it just needs to be signed by the property owner.
Did I send you the time? Lester, next time we order door stops, let's get one for this one, remember? Yep, yeah, so. It's. First of the paper is Monday, right? Yeah. So 2 weeks after that. I'll send you the calendar that has the date, just so that if you kind of forget or get off track, then it tells you like when, because we're a week behind. The pay period is a week behind the pay period. He turns it in on a Monday, and that same week on that Friday it gets paid out. But I'll send you just so you have a copy of it. All right, sounds good. Okay, thanks. So.
Yeah, well, they're actually in closed session. Yeah. That's what they're doing. We're in closed session. They just sent me out to do a counter on another offer. Yeah. Well, the other offer was substantially higher. So, they just said, let's talk to them, and if they work out one little detail on their offer, then I don't know how that works.
Well, if they're countering them, couldn't they counter us, vice versa?
Well, I don't know whether because their offer was more than your offer, then that's who they negotiate with. Right? Their offer was, you know, a lot more than your offer. So they said, we can work out the one detail that they had question out, then that's who they would work with.
So this is a cash buyer.
Yeah.
They would come back.
So that makes it, I don't know, because the way that the process works is that they've got, I mean, if, seems like you just pick your highest buyer, the highest price that you got, and then negotiate with them for any small detail. It wasn't on the price, it was just on a condition.
Well, I thought, usually what we get into is highest and best if you got an offer. Have 2 or 3, right? Imagine, highest offer.
Well, I'll talk with them about that.
You wanna just say that we're willing to do that?
Yeah, I'll mention that. I'll see what they've got, what do they
Okay,
want to do.
I'll just wait for you.
Okay.
Thanks. I, Debbie Guthrie, Dan Roberts. Okay. Yeah, I'm over at the county meeting. Another bid and higher hours. I have a feeling they're not gonna come anymore. I just, yeah, see, we submitted $1.2 million at first, and they came back, and then 525, and then, we're on number 5, and so we split the difference with them, and at 362. They come back at 425, maybe 425. And so they come down 100,000, and now Twyla says, well, you don't know what I had to do to go through to get them to come down to that part. I says, well, see what you can do, Twyla. But that's the other thing, we hate to lose both of these, but they'll probably give the first right of refusal to the highest bidder, you know, is probably the feeling I'm getting. But, it's, I don't know. Oh, I know, yeah. It's just, you know, I think that all in all, that building, I think it's really nice try. Yeah, I'd hate to see him lose that one, you know. Okay, all right. I will, I'll call you. Okay, bye.
Chair declares the, oh, we're not ready yet, sorry.
Technology's great when it works. Okay, go ahead.
Chair declares the closed session adjourned. We're back in regular county commission meeting. We have an offer for the full appraised value, cash offer, no fees. We talked about some of the offers that have a financing option. We didn't want to enter into that. With this offer, we have one county employee in that building, and we can continue to keep that county employee there. We'd have to pay rent, of course. So we've determined that we would go ahead and accept this offer. Of course, we'll have to draw up all the paperwork, and the final deal would be approved in a future commission meeting. That is our announcement at this point. And I guess we don't need a motion because we're just announcing. So,
I thought we had decided to vote on it, didn't we?
do we need a? I guess we do need a motion. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chad.
You might want to direct our department here to continue to see that paperwork through probably, don't you?
Yeah, we definitely direct the building and zoning department to see that paperwork through. And we do need a motion.
I'll move. I'll move to accept the offer of a full it's a full appraised value cash offer, pending the completion of the paperwork.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we accept the full appraised value offer that we've received pending completion of paperwork. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Thank you.
We'll bring that back to you. Hopefully we'll bring it back to you in 2 weeks, ready to go.
I don't know why these closed session stuff make me nervous.
I think that's a.
Are we off, John?
No?
Oh.
Oh.
Did I?
We
Chair declares the commission meeting adjourned. Thank you.
I'm headed to Bryan Head Town Council. Any messages?
Okay. Tell me how much snow you have to shovel.